Welcome to the For the Love of the Game podcast with your hosts, Jefferson Belfort and Brian Hernandez. This is episode 58. Brian, how are you doing?
I am doing good. Doing good. We're getting basketball back. A little bit as the time of we're recording this has been one preseason game. My Knicks, I believe, play on Monday. I cannot wait. It's fun. This is the time of the year that we want. And a lot of things have happened since we've last recorded. So I am very excited. Basketball's back. Jeff, how you doing?
Doing good, man. As you mentioned, the season is right around the corner. We had our first preseason game on Thursday in Abu Dhabi. The Mavs and the T Wolves. I don't know if you got to see any highlights or watch it. Um, that it feels good when the season's around, like you said. But I will be in full attention because sadly my football team will not be
Ooh.
will not be will not be doing anything this year, it seems like. So I'll be in full attention for the NBA this season, which is great, which will also help out the podcast and help me with providing some great details to our listeners.
Ooh. I know this isn't one of our topics, but since you're talking about football team not going as well, I do want to get your thoughts on the Brooklyn Nets and specifically Ben Simmons and if you think there's going to be a comeback. But we could talk about that later. Yeah, man, basketball's back.
Right. I think I got a place to squeeze that in
Okay.
our things that we're gonna hit today. But yeah, like today we're going to it's not gonna be your conventional a lot of topics, hard topics set out today, but we're going to recap these two blockbuster trades that just happened this week. A lot of content is coming from this from a lot of creators across YouTube, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you're watching. You got the there's the clip that I keep on seeing now of the Celtics head coach talking to JJ Redick about losing to Miami
Oh, that was
and
funny.
talking about the Bucks. But I think save it for when we start that conversation. But I have something to say about the Miami Heat with that in mind. But we'll
Ooh.
go over those two trades. We'll talk a little bit about some still rumors out there of players that will be traded and go from there.
All right, man.
Are you ready, Brian?
Let's do it.
All right, perfect. Well, I'll just sneak it in right now just to start this conversation about the two blockbuster trades. But, you know, I don't think there's ever a bigger motivator in any sports than actually losing, right? And having to answer to those losses. And for that reason, I think the Milwaukee Bucks and the Boston Celtics will be sending a gift basket to the Miami Heat for thanking them for beating them this past playoffs, as a real motivator for them to take a look at their rosters and just, really assess like we need to shake some things up. As we look at both of the trades, both teams wind up getting some very impactful players. But let's talk about the big one. Let's talk about the trade that I'm sure you were surprised
Oh.
by the winner of this trade, clearly the winner of this trade. Um, and Brian, what do you think about the new duo, Freak Time and Milwaukee?
Free time. I remember I did see that. I love that nickname. Um, yeah, so for the listeners, I guess if anyone's been hiding behind a rock and didn't know that Damian Lillard did get traded to the Milwaukee Bucks after a whole summer of him screaming on rooftops, talking about how he wants to go to Miami and he's only going to go to Miami and nowhere else. I am very happy to see him in Milwaukee, and this is pretty huge. This is this is going to be one of the more fun teams to watch in the NBA. Right now, we saw also this entire summer that Giannis has just been putting pressure on the Milwaukee Bucks organization to do something. I at first was a little sad when seeing Jrue Holiday being included in that trade because Jrue Holiday Jeff, you talked about it plenty of times. He was one of the most impactful players on that team, and it was one of the biggest reasons why they actually won that championship a few years ago. Jrue Holiday is amazing, but to get someone of Damian Lillard's caliber to pair up with Giannis, hopefully Chris Middleton is 80% of what he was in the past. Like, that is a team that is very deadly, can win it all. I'm excited. Like, both these guys never played with somebody at this caliber. Like, I feel like with you see someone like LeBron, he's had so many amazing teammates. Kevin Durant, so many amazing teammates. Steph Curry, so many amazing teammates. Now, Giannis has had good teammates, like we talked about Chris Middleton, Jrue Holiday, but no one of Dame's status. I'm pumped. This is going to be one of the best 1-2 punches in the NBA. But Jeff, before I go any further, what do you think?
And I'm here to put out bold statements today,
Oh,
and it's not just for engagement, it's not for clicks. I'm talking about, like, for real. There's things that I think about this team. Honestly, for me personally, as a Nets fan, this sucks. But for the NBA, for if you're a Milwaukee Bucks fan, this is possibly the best thing that could have happened, right?
oh yeah.
First angle I wanted to hit, the you ever seen like that meme where it's like, or the where it's like, they don't miss. He just don't miss, right?
Yeah.
That's what the Milwaukee Bucks office is at this point, in my mind. Is Giannis shows discontent with where they stand, where he feels about where what is going on. It's like within days, these guys are within the year at least, these guys respond and say, like, you know what, like, we hear you as our superstar, we want to retain you, we're going to do things that are in the best interest of retaining you and retaining relevance in this league, right? A lot of the times you always hear front offices, or there's always some tension between front offices when players get to that point, right? Because when it's all said and done, players are in the interest of winning. Some of them, not the best players in the league, are in the interest of winning, right? But sometimes they just don't know how to do it, right? Like,
Hmm.
they may think that they're in the best interest of winning, but they're not, right? In this case, the Giannis has nothing to fear with the Bucks front office. They've answered the call every time he needed the right amount of assets, right? Let's say, thinking about it, you brought up the Drew Holiday trade. What if they made this type of Lillard trade 3 years ago when they won the championship? What would that have looked like? We don't know if that naturally meant that they were going to win a championship. Who, like, you don't know if that puts a battery in the back of all the other teams in the East as well for them to go further and just go against the Bucks, right? They weren't winners. They weren't solidified winners at that point yet, because they haven't won anything. They got the right type of asset at that time. They got a guy that was hungry as a two-way player that fits right into the mold of what they were looking for at that time. Now, as a winner, Giannis a winner, Middleton as a winner. Giannis now, his second best player was Chris Middleton in that championship run. I would not even trade, man. Like, there's so many things I would trade in the world over like that situation to what they have now. Right?
Hmm.
Dame Lillard is clearly the second best option he's ever had.
Oh yeah.
Uh, and that I've ever had, right? And it's leaps and bounds. And there's places where he would be the first option. So for them to sneak in like a thief in the night to get this trade done when it was only two teams that was rumored to been in conversation outside of Miami and this, kind of like how like the president has like has like the secret phone where he
Yeah,
gets like
yeah.
private calls, right? Like that's what the Blazers did in this situation is pulled out that phone and called the Bucks and called the Nets and told them, hey man, like Dame said he's down. If you down, if you can put a package, we're here. And they did it. They did it. And honestly, there's a lot of, I live in South Florida, so obviously I'm gonna
Oh,
hear
I
I'm gonna
forgot.
hear the
Yeah,
tension with it.
I want to hear what
I'm
people have
gonna
been
hear the
saying over there.
you're going to hear people that say that the package that the Miami Heat presented was better. And I'm just going to flat out and say it isn't, man. Like this presented the best path for the Blazers to recuperate some talent, to recuperate some draft compensation, and start going towards a positive direction in a younger standpoint. Dame Lillard has not fit the mold of what the Blazers have been doing probably arguably the last 3 years since CJ, like CJ, I think got traded 2 years ago, but like since CJ moved, that should have been the nail in the coffin that Dame Lillard should have went to.
Yep.
But they stayed true to having him on the team until now. But I'll let you jump in, Brian. But kudos to their front office first before I hit the other angles about this trade.
Yeah. So one of the points I really want to touch on, you mentioned like Bucks are happy, and especially the NBA is happy, and I think the NBA is like very happy with this trade because I think if Dame got his way and got to go to Miami, that sets a really bad precedent for the rest of the NBA. Because if a guy that has multiple years on his contract is forcing away his way to only one specific team by making a threat saying, I'm not going to show up to your training camp if I go anywhere else, more people are going to start doing that. And we've already been seeing it kind of working and more people are doing it. We'll talk about probably James Harden later, but like these things are starting to happen. And if Dame was able to actually get his way, especially when Miami had, yeah, I agree with you. I do not like that Miami package whatsoever. I don't see any reason why the Blazers should have taken that. Yes, Tyler Hero is a great player. Sure, you might want to say Tyler Hero is a better player than DeAndre Ayton. I don't care. The fit made no sense for the Blazers. You're going to trade, it's like pretty much you're going to reroute Tyler Hero, but like why he's your biggest package. I don't like Miami's picks at all. I trust that organization too much, or I have too much respect for that organization to ever think they're really going to be bad. They've never really tanked before. Even when they've been not had a great roster, they've just still rebuilt the right way. Like they're they're not going to tank. I don't care about those picks whatsoever. And yeah, like if you're going to give me Duncan Robinson, I don't care. It's just all these things. That Miami package, I never loved. I never really cared about. This package that they end up getting, in my opinion, is way better. Yeah, DeAndre Ayton might be overpaid. Yeah, he might not be the best player ever. But like, I much rather take a shot on someone like DeAndre Ayton versus just getting picks. Like at this point, I'm surprised most people kind of don't see this, that the NBA draft to get right on a player is really hard. Like a lot of times you make a lot of misses. Why not get at least a guy who has shown you that he can actually play at a really high level at certain points, like when he's happy and all this other stuff. Yeah, it's disaster with Phoenix afterwards, but he had that playoff series a couple years ago where he was really good. So I much rather take a flyer on him than a complete unknown, and it's a mystery box. And that's exactly what first round picks are. And so I think the Blazers did an amazing thing. They already rerouted Drew Holiday. They got a bunch of. They still got a lot of picks. They still got all these things. They got that unprotected Bucks 2029 pick, which maybe it's something, maybe it's not. 2029 is a long ways away. A lot of stuff can happen. Giannis cannot be there anymore. This was easily the best package.
I agree 100%. Back on to for me on the Bucks angle of it, right? Is um I don't think it's crazy to say in that time of the contract, like you mentioned, there probably was not a better team for him to go to where this contract is absorbed and it's not as much of an albatross as what it is. The dude's gonna make 60 mil, not this year, I believe, but next year,
Mm-hmm.
is gonna make 60 mil in a year. And where the Bucks stand, where their roster looks, they're a lot older. They definitely have a win now roster, so it makes sense that they make this choice to do this.
Oh yeah.
But I'm not going to harp on that. What I'm trying to harp on actually is that I think in the timing of this contract, which I believe there's still 3 years left on his contract, very well could be in my mind. This is what I'm going to project now is that out of the 2 of the 3 years that he's on this contract, Dame Lillard's gonna win a championship. I wish that wasn't the case, but I'm so confident in this duo, this pairing, because it's something like a lot of people are joking, like, use that Shaq and Kobe highlight stuff with a lot of things now. But this is truly the first time since then we had a duo that fits like that.
Yeah.
Like, yes, we've seen a lot of duos, we've seen a lot of big threes over the years, but a lot of the times it it was never guys that complement each other. It literal in the literal sense, a lot of these trios and duos we see now are guys that pick when they take over, right? Paul George and Kawhi. Kawhi has the possessions one moment, then Paul George has the possessions one moment. ISO ball heavy. Let's do that. Not only are these two guys that I think their games completely mesh together in the pick and roll offense, I think these are two of the hardest working guys in the league. Like, you think when Katie and Kyrie were on the Nets, like they were able to tell those guys to do sprints and do suicides and go to extra mile. You got a guy that's equally hungry to win a championship, and then you have a guy that I just don't. He has the he by far has the biggest motor in the league in my mind of like hunger and wanting to win in Giannis,
Oh yeah.
where I think that that's a perfect marriage of like players, and we probably may never see something like this. And honestly, I really do think when if they do what I think they're going to do to winning the 2 out of 3, there's going to be a time to have a real conversation about is this a better duo than Shaq and Kobe? Because this is Giannis prime, like
Yeah.
in his prime. Yes, Lillard's a little bit older than Giannis, but like Giannis is Giannis is at his physical prime, whereas Shaq was still kind of there in that time. He still was the most dominant player in the league, but he started to lose that hunger towards the end of it. I don't
Yeah.
think Giannis will ever lose that,
No shot.
you know?
I you kind of talked about like the Shaq and Kobe kind of stuff. The only what the closest duo I can kind of see to this is the team that just won the championship. When you have someone like Jokic and Murray, like
Yes.
those two guys complement each other perfectly. And we saw exactly how well this worked. And the only thing that's ever really stopped those two from dominating even more is injuries. So hopefully that doesn't happen with Dame. He is a little bit older now. We have seen a little bit of injuries from him. So hopefully nothing happens there. But this is a deadly duo. What do you think about this trade for the Suns? They gave up DeAndre Ayton and pretty much returned for Yusuf Nurkic. They got Grayson Allen. They gave up a little bit of other stuff, I think. But what do you think about this for the Suns to actually help facilitate all this? They pretty much kind of helped give their biggest competition here. They bolster their biggest competition here. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it is a little strange that they did that. I think they thought, obviously, they thought that Aiton being with the team is just a negative vibe. They needed to get that out of the locker room. But I think rounding out the edges was what their mindset was with this trade, getting a Nasir Little, Nurkic in this trade. All guys I don't think are going to be that effective like for their run. I'm wearing a hat today too is the funny part.
Yeah, right.
But I am not confident in what I see out of these guys. I still think that the Nuggets are a better team. The team that you just mentioned are a better team suited to beat them. I think that they're going to run up against the Lakers and lose that too. If not the Nuggets, like I just don't see where a world where this works the way that they think. But I'm happy about that because I'm a Nets fan, and the more the Suns decide to mortgage their future, the better the situation becomes for me to get picks. I think in a world we're in a world where you give them two shots to try to see if they can win it. With a guy like KD. KD's getting older. He's 35 now. 37. Look at LeBron. He's still effective at his age. I think KD could still be effective past those years. But do I see KD just sitting there for 5 years? The next 5 years on the Suns trying to figure it out and see if they're going to win. Do I see Devin Booker doing that too? I think that we're also riding on, and it's gonna sound crazy to say this, but like some guys reach that peak a lot quicker than others, and I think that Bradley Beal might be one of those guys that we might see some regression in his game if after 2 years they don't get what they're looking for, right? So the time is now to attack. I just don't think that that was the right decision. I know they've been talking about it for a while, that they wanted to move off Aiton, but I just don't understand how you have a guy that's under 25 that was a number one pick, still an effective player, just because you're upset with how he perceives the team, how he perceives his contract dispute. That's why you're going to move him. You know, kind
I
of weird.
uh I don't know. I actually I would say I'm on the other side, which I'm happy you take this angle so I could actually oppose it because I really think DeAndre Ayton was pretty bad for this team. Like you don't, because at the end of the day, yes, on paper, DeAndre Ayton is better than Yusuf Nurkic. He could be a really productive paper and everything, but like on the people side of things, I think he was, for lack of a better term, a cancer to the locker room. You already know from a lot of people just in the front office. I think I was listening to the Windhorse podcast and they were talking about this of like a lot of people in the Suns front office believe that DeAndre Ayton just decided to sit out of the playoffs last season and he just did not want to play for them and was kind of like faking an injury kind of thing. This man was always upset. You hear Windhorse talk about it plenty of times when he just signed his giant max contract And yet he's looking at media day last year, upset. It's you don't really need that drama, especially when you're trying to win. And if you can kind of downgrade from him to kind of round out the rest of your roster, I think it's pretty good. I actually also think I kind of feel like Bradley Beal's going to have a good year this year because he doesn't have to do too much. Think about it. He's playing with someone like Kevin Durant. He's playing with someone like Devin Booker. Bradley Beal's the third option. When was the last time Bradley Beal was the third option? We've seen him be really good as a second option before. As a first option, Bradley Beal's not that guy. He's just not. And
No.
so now that he can really kind of sit in the corner. He was really good at defense at one point. Like he can do a lot of still these things. And when he doesn't have that first option pressure and he gets to play off all these other guys, I think it's going to be really good. As Devin Booker can handle the point guard responsibilities really well. We've seen him do it without Chris Paul. That was really good. Love that Eric Gordon's on this team. They have a lot of things that could go wrong, but I don't think at the moment I'm ready to say that they are definitely worse than the Nuggets and the Lakers. Now, I think the Lakers are actually going to be pretty good this year, surprisingly, but I'm not confident to say that they are worse. I think they're kind of at that same level. I don't know. I'm pretty high on Phoenix this year. To me it makes
Uh,
sense.
for me, it goes even further into. Um, I could guarantee to you that we're going to see at least 20 games missed by each one of those guys, right?
Probably.
So that plays a part in my mind, right? Like that's just what it's been trending for these guys
Yep.
the last couple of years, right? Obviously the most durable of the three is going to be Booker. But you're now even the role players you chose to bring in, you're relying on a guy that's injury prone in a Nurkic, right?
Yep.
So Jock
Yes.
Lindell is going to take a lot of that starting big man decision. A lot of what I'm saying is not about the regular season. It's about, we had an offline conversation about like the Celtics, and when we get there, I'll speak
Yep.
on that as well. It's like a lot of what I'm saying is not about what's going to happen in the regular season. It's about where we stand when the postseason comes. And when the postseason rolls around, am I more confident that it's are going to be bolstering a team or a depth within their team that could withstand injuries? Is the Lakers have a team that I think will withstand injuries? I, that's where it stands in my mind. I'm thinking about it. Unless if LeBron's missing the full playoffs, I don't see a world where they naturally just like completely fall off the cliff. AD, we know again, another guy that we could guarantee he's going to miss
Yep.
possibly 20 games in the season. And this is on the low end. I'm just being very rather than saying some really outlandish numbers. The NBA is actually incentivizing these very very great talents in the league to play more
Mm-hmm.
than 65 games this season. So we should see an uptick in games that they play, but we know that injuries is an element to it. Um, I just personally, because what I've seen out of Kevin Durant the last couple of years, where he's missed time, large amounts of time, the last couple of years, the reasons being for whatever reason. Um, how do they look? Like, how does that Suns team withstand that? Like, yes, Devin Booker is a great talent, but this is probably when Kevin Durant's not around, when Bradley Beal probably missing a few games too, it's probably worse than some of the Suns teams that he's played with in the past, right? Like just keeping it a buck. So that's where I stand on like how I feel about this team is that like they're just and they could surprise me with some of their pickups like Bait Stop,
You got Bo on that
and
team.
Ball, you know. But it's a lot of like it's a lot of screaming Brooklyn again, like hypotheticals. Like we have to see it happen for us to believe it's going to happen. At least he's dealing with two mentally sound people
That's
in
where I
this
think
situation.
the difference is a little bit. I don't know. I guess
Yeah,
I'm more higher on just Devin Booker himself. That like even if KD's missing some games, if Beal misses some games, that Devin Booker's still good enough to help them out. Now, like we were saying in the playoffs, though, I if everyone's actually healthy, I think that team is extremely dangerous. I mean, it's the same thing with any team. As soon as you miss your top guys who are injury prone, it completely changes the whole formula. But as of right now, like you said, yeah, we have to see it. But I'm high enough on all those guys, and now that they actually have their whole entire roster a little bit more rounded out, you got someone like Grayson Allen. Grayson Allen was playing starter minutes for this Bucks team. Grayson Allen was actually like pretty good. Like he did his thing. Yeah, you don't Grayson Allen, a lot of people have his beef or have beef with him, which is very understandable. But if he's on your side, I'm I'm pretty cool with that. I think the team's gonna be solid. I think they're gonna be good. Uh, to me, they're a contender until I see otherwise. But on paper,
they
the
definitely can.
vibes look
Yeah,
really good, and yeah, looking at media day, vibes look really good. Everyone looks happy to be there. But at the end of the day, as soon as you start losing games, that's when your team's really tested.
exactly. So I actually had an angle that I wanted to hit with you and see where you think about this. Is as the dust settles, um, Trailblazers, and I'll actually add in the trade with Drew Holiday just so we can naturally move
Yep.
into that as well. Um, the Trailblazers wind up acquiring right DeAndre and Tumani Kamari. Obviously, they moved Drew Holiday. I'll talk about that when we get there. They got the 2029 first pick. They have a 2028, 2030 first round pick swap. And then, that trade, turning around that trade of Drew Holiday to get back Robert Williams, Malcolm Brogdon, getting a 2024 first round pick from the Warriors, which you know what, when I really think about it, that might be the biggest steal of this
Mm.
trade because we don't really know what this Warriors team's going to look like this year. And then lastly, they got the Celtics 2029 first round pick. When the dust settles, we're looking at a team in the Blazers that has recuperated five first round picks. Um, they're able to now showcase completely their youth and their three guys, Shaden Sharp and Scoot and Afrini. I don't know. I can't
Anthony.
say it. Anthony Simons,
There you go.
and then to be able to bolster that with young talent like Aiton, like Williams. Yes, Williams injury prone, but this is the perfect situation for a guy like an injury prone Williams to develop that talent, right? I think Aiton gets a lot of the slack for how things played out, but I don't think a lot of people sit back and think about like what Aiton was thrust into
Oh yeah.
right when he got drafted because it was that same year he was drafted. They brought in Chris Paul, and he had to quickly become ready for this, right? And that's the year that they went on the run, right? Like for the championship run. So you're looking at a guy that um, has not been given a lot of time to develop his game because they're more in a win now mindset, not allowing for him to make mistakes. They needed him to fit a certain box for
Yeah.
that time. And I think that that was his biggest issue, is that he thinks of himself he could be a bigger player or a better player. And I don't mind a guy wanting to bet on himself in that sense. This is the team where he gets that, right?
Yep.
He either gonna have to prove it or not that he has that in him. But I go I I go on, not going into that soliloquy about Aiton. I ask you, Brian. This is a big question to me. Is there's been two superstar, well, three superstar blockbuster trades in the last 12 months. Those being obviously four actually. Those being the Beal trade, those being the Katie, Kyrie, and now this trade, where a team is losing superstars, but they're recuperating draft assets and they're recuperating young talent. Out of those three teams, who do you think in your mind poses as like best future because of those trades? The Wizards, the Nets, or the Blazers at this point?
Um, that's actually a good question. I don't think it's the Wizards because I don't. They didn't really get that much for Beal. Their return wasn't crazy. I remember. I don't remember exactly what it was even at this time. I just remember thinking it wasn't crazy. So they're X'd out for me. It to me, it might just be. I think it's actually. I'm pretty certain on this now. It's the Nets. To me, it has to be the Nets because solely because of Mikal Bridges. Because like I said before, I love draft picks. I love all this stuff, but it's a crapshoot. At the end of the day, I want somebody who's proven and who's shown that he gets better every single year and who's looking really great, who's already good now. I don't care about the future. Give me someone who's good now and still young. Mikal Bridges is that guy. I think he's legit. We seen him last season when he was the number one option. What he can do, he was insanely good. And then on top of that, you still have Cam Johnson. You still have all these picks. You still have all that stuff. I think that's so impactful. I think that's so good. I think the Blazers have a lot more flyers and guys that could potentially be really good in Scoot. And I mean, Simons is actually already pretty good, but still, like, I want to see Simons playing a certain way that actually translates to winning because I already know Mikal Bridges is a winning player. Scoot, he's a what if at the moment for me. I like Shaden Sharp, but still, like, to me, it's all about proving. It's all about proving guys. Mikal's that guy. That's why he shoots me. That's why the Nets are higher for me. But what do you think?
Listeners, as you can see, Brian is more of a kinetic energy guy. He needs to see it happening for it to be real for him. And I think I'm a potential energy guy. And I actually am gonna refute that. And I know it's at the mercy of my own team. But I'm gonna say I actually love everything the Blazers did here, man. And
I
that's
agree.
why I think I believe that they have a brighter future in my mind than any of those three teams, right? And that solely becomes because they've opened the door to allow for their young players to truly give it their all, right? Like, and see what they really are. They didn't get guys, they kept their minds straight on we were not going to get guys that complicate what we already have and the young guys that we have so that they could continue to grow. We've seen growth just because we haven't seen um a lot of success from them. We have seen growth in two of the players that they've been developing. Shaden Sharp had a phenomenal season last year for what it was, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people forget that the Blazers started the last season really hot too.
Yeah,
Like,
they did.
I will say there's a couple contracts that complicates it, but I think that those contracts wind up being pieces that I think that they're going to flip in the future for more assets or for more players that fit their timeline. A guy like Jeremy Grant is going to be, if they open up the doors to conversation about Jeremy Grant, that's a guy that, man, all these contenders would love to have. Having him on probably, I think he has like 2 more years left on his
I
contract.
think
Um,
he just signed they just
or
re-signed him this year, so he has like a
he
pretty
just
big
resigned. Okay.
contract. I think that's
Yeah.
yeah, it's one of the more interesting contracts and signings. I think they signed him because they were hoping that that was enough to keep Dame, but turned around. But yeah, he still could potentially be traded, but the contract is a little interesting.
Yeah. So in that case, you have a tradable player that does produce. One thing that I also love about this trade is they get another player. They flipped a guy, and then they got another guy that they could flip again. Like
Yeah,
they got Malcolm Brogdon to be another guy that could you can easily flip. I don't think he's a problem guy in a locker room. He's not going to make issues with being with this team for whatever time it is. And whatever time he gives there, we've seen what he's been in his career. Very by the book, buttoned up like type of NBA guy. Straight professionalism has been who he has been since his his Bucks years, his Pacer years, his now Celtics years. This guy's always been a professional in
yep.
this league. So I think that there's going to be a lot that he could teach to these young guys on this team too. And this is before we're even talking about the depth on this team in the front court. We're talking about Williams, as I mentioned, a guy that is going to be given a bigger leash because now he doesn't also have to fit a box. He gets some time to truly play in a system where we can see the most out of his defensive prowess. I think Aiton now demands the ball a little bit differently. I know he's talked about his game's been limited because of where he was. Like he has elements of the three ball that he would love to try, but like
Yeah.
that's not what the Suns were looking for in him. You know, like there's just certain aspects that allows me to believe that this team they kind of feel like it kind of feels like the making uh of the Thunder of North like in my mind. I'm not going to say they have the same type of talent, but the and potential energy and the movement of potentially being something or working something together. They seem sound in that sense. And then lastly, I will say I also think that they have a bright future because they have a leader that is not going to get, and pardon my French, get bitch slapped by 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 Pat Riley, man. Like Pat Riley really thought that he was just gonna go in there
It's true.
and
Yeah.
just fleece these guys. And he said, nope, you know what? Like I saw some stuff too where he gave credence to the situation that he saw with Sean Marks not taking less than for that trade, and he believed that that was what he was going to do as well. And he did it right. He did it the same exact way that Sean Marks did it. Even though I have my qualms with Sean Marks, is that he did wait for the best offer because if the Nets took it right when it started, they wouldn't have had Mikal Bridges. They would probably not even have Cam Johnson. They would have been getting a lot of pieces and a lot of picks that meant nothing. You
Mhm.
know, now we have picks that are relevant because it's so far out. Some of them are in this same type of timeline, but so far out that you got the most out of it. And that's why I think they're more suited in my mind for the better future of the three.
It's so no, I definitely see why you can say that. And I when I say that I think the Nets actually have a better future, I'm not saying that I don't believe the Blazers don't have a good future because like you said, they have a lot of really interesting and fun players that could potentially be something really good. I guess I guess I definitely used to be on your boat of like loving the potential after I guess being a Knicks fan and seeing so many potential guys that I was so high on and they never live up to it, I'm always just like, what do you have now? Because yeah, you can have all the physical potential, you can have all this other stuff, but until I actually see you building up your game, gaining new skills, I don't believe on on potential too much. So so that's why I'm actually pretty high on DeAndre Ayton because we have seen him in the past play at an extremely high level when he's happy and when he's motivated. So now he can get back to that. I'm pretty excited to see how that works. Yeah, he has some red flags, and there's the conversation of how he doesn't like to be super physical in the paint. See how that works out over there. But it's a lot of room for him to at least grow and mess up his game, or not mess up his game, but just experiment with his game. I'm huge on Simons. I really like him. I guess a lot of these guys I just need to see more. But Mikal Bridges, that guy's legit. He is legit. I would like to see the Nets have some more kind of younger talent, but I think the talent that they have can actually, or the talent they have is just at a higher level at the moment. Well, actually, I mentioned so one thing I kind of wanted to touch on, which is still kind of with this, was with Malcolm Brogdon. I remember he was actually going to be included in that Celtics trade where they got Porzingis, but he didn't
Mhm.
because of some physical thing, like he didn't pass a physical or there's some injury kind of concerns. I'm surprised. I'm
Yes.
interested to why it's went fine now, and I guess the Blazers didn't care. Um, and so that's where also it
Um,
kind of intrigues me to see how do they flip him in the future? Do they wait for him to be 100% healthy if he isn't already? Yeah.
I think it's just kind of like you're a Mets fan, I'm a Mets fan, so
Oh
I'll
yeah.
use this reference. Is with Carlos Carrasco this last season, where he signed first with the Giants, failed the physical, came to the Mets, failed the physical, and then he's signed with the Twins again. And then look, he had a good season, right?
Yep.
Is it's up to the discretion of the team when it comes
Sure.
down to it. So they have their own guys do the physical. They report that information up to front office. Front office then, if they have any quorums with it, that's where they nix things. And he was supposed to go to the Clippers, I believe. I
Mm,
forgot who else was going to be moved in that
same.
trade with that, but he was supposed to go to the Clippers. I think Terrence Mann was supposed to go somewhere else.
Mm,
Um, and that was supposed to be the trade, but that didn't. Obviously, we see that didn't come to fruition. Um, I I do think that that's really not strange, but I think that they needed the Celtics, and now we can go into the Celtics
yeah.
aspect of this. As I was saying, another team that should be sending gift baskets to the Miami Heat is the is the Boston Celtics. So um, I think that the Boston Celtics knew they needed to move him after word came out. He was in the package and it was Knicks because of him. Just, you know, would be a weird situation. But it was always funny to me because I did think about how interesting it was that they would move off of Marcus Smart rather than move a Derek White or Malcolm Brogdon. Because when I
Yeah.
look at Derek White and I look at Malcolm Brogdon, they are comp they are the not complementary. They are similar players in my mind. So I wonder, do you keep those two guys? Do you try to see what value you could get out of him? And you see now they've done that. They got a guy that has equally the same level of talent and ability to produce on the defensive end as a Marcus Smart. It's just I don't know, man. Like Marcus Smart was a part of the heart of that team for so long. It's so hard to move from a guy like that and just
Yeah.
expect get another guy and it fits seamlessly, you hope it to be the case, right? You've seen Drew Holiday do it with the Bucks, so there's a lot of people that are confident that that will translate here. But there's just we are in the NBA and in a world where some of these things aren't just not one to one when you do it. So it's a lot more of a wait and see approach in my mind. Again, going back to what I mentioned about when we sit and we think about like what the end of the season, the postseason is going to look like. On paper, in the regular season, this team will be dominant. Like we know that there's going to be a really good team. Uh, the biggest issue that starts to begin to creep in my mind is the durability in the front court. You're now relying on it's different when you now have to rely on a guy that's injury prone, right?
Yeah.
Like when I brought up the Nurkic thing, is like Nurkic, when he was at his highs, he's a great player, like a great add to any team. But your front court depth cannot rely on him, like to be your your best option there. In this case, that's how I feel about Porzingis. We saw a lot of the flash and the pan last year from Porzingis and the Wizards, where he was doing some stuff he was doing when he was in the Knicks,
Yeah.
right? Just a good place for him to in his game to progress and mesh a little bit better. But I do think that when we get to the postseason, it's going to be a big issue with durability. There's going to be a big issue against, especially in this Eastern Conference, that is very heavy on two of the top teams having front court depth that is massive. Where Luke Kennard's not going to help that out. Mike Muscala's not going to help that out. And by God, I know, I know that Porzingis is not going to help that out. So I wonder what the approach is going to be. Are they going to try to add someone through the season to help impact that?
I'm I'm actually personally not as worried about it because as we kind of talk about all the time, like guy, it's just all the best big men you can think about. You got Giannis, you got Embiid, you got Jokic, and all that. Like those are the type of guys. No matter if you have Robert Williams or not, you can't stop them. No one's stopping them. And so if you can kind of bolster everything else, and right now you just saw the Bucks got Damian Lillard, who's a guy that can not necessarily stop him, but contain him a little bit more. Jrue Holiday, you got to kind of match up there. Like you don't lose anything with Marcus Smart, so that's not bad. But two, to me, yeah, maybe Porzingis is not the guy. Maybe he does get injured, sure. But I feel like with the center, the margins aren't as crazy where you can kind of get a guy that can just work hard for you and you're not gonna lose that much. Especially Robert Williams, impressive guy. He's also a guy that was always injured. He always had some type of problem, especially when it came to being around and healthy for the playoffs. Um, I'm not too worried about it. It's just because they got better everywhere else. So they are going to be a different team, especially when it comes to the defensive end. But I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing because they also are a little bit different on offense.
It just this team screams to me 16, 17 Spurs, right? Like you add a you add a guy like a LaMarcus Aldridge to help your efforts, but it's mute compared to the best team in the conference is the Warriors. They got KD, they have Curry, they have Clay, right? Like this it doesn't matter. That's where I ask you this question. Do you think that this trade even takes them to being better than the Bucks at this present moment? I know it
I
was something they needed to do,
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't know if it brings them to be better, especially like without seeing it, it's hard to say. But what I do think it did was when the Bucks did the trade, they were, in my opinion, better than the Celtics. But now Celtics kind of did this trade, and if anything, they're at least or at most matching what the Bucks just did. They kind of leveled it out again, in my opinion. Malcolm Brogdon is also like a lot of these guys that they traded away are injury prone and all that. So I think it just kind of just more matched it. I think they're kind of around the same level as they were, and it really mostly relies on if Jason Tatum is going to take a step up in his game and if he's going to be better than he was last year. And if there's, I feel like that tandem between the Jalen's, both of them together, like if it meshes any better, because I'm still like not the craziest about it. It always is like you kind of talked about with Kawhi and Paul George. That's kind of how that always feels to me. And we always see like when one guy's on, the other one's off, and it's just constantly like that. So I'm interested to see how that works out. Interested to see how Porzingis, like, yeah, we saw him do really good last year, but he was
Not in
one
a
of their
winning
top. He was
situation.
one of their top options. And as we saw,
Yeah.
yeah, I think Porzingis is more mature than he was in the past. But when we saw that he's the type, or he was in the past, the type of guy that when he doesn't get his touches, when he doesn't get his shot, when he's not scoring 20 a game, he is not a happy player. So is he different now? Definitely there's potential, but I have to see before anything else. I think they're so good though. I think to me, they're on the same level. Do you think differently?
I completely differently.
Okay.
I already told you
Yeah,
I got
yeah.
this team winning 2 out of the next 3 finals. For me, I just think the marriage of what the Bucks did is just more seamless
I
and
agree.
less frictionless than what the Celtics did over this offseason. Moving a guy like it just like they got guys that fit the mold of players that they had. Like it's kind of a little funny to me in that sense. Obviously, Porzingis, that was there's no direct one-to-one match for that, but like I mean, the Marcus Smart move, like moving Marcus Smart to get a guy like that, uh, and Drew Holiday, yes, a winner, so there's that to add, but it just feels a little interesting to me because I just don't see how it's fixed any of the problems they had in the playoffs. Like, and you know, when it really came down to it, brass tacks of it is that they started to struggle with finding offense in the late stages of those games when the two-man game wasn't working. Do I think Drew Holiday answers that? Not necessarily. I don't think that he's that much of he's getting older, and I
Yep.
don't think that he's the type of guy that is going to garnish a lot of the offense responsibilities. Yes, defensively a great player, but you move a guy that used to be, you move a guy that was the defensive player of the year before for a guy that is close to being the defensive player of the year. Obviously, that's semantics. But I'm just saying, like it's not that much of a change in my mind. I don't know where it really changed, other than having a different face there. It's going to be that the X factor, and in my mind, I think in the playoff nowadays, is your depth is your X factor. So the depth is something that no one talks about with the Celtics team. Um, it was it was called to it was held under the light in this playoffs, right?
Yep.
Like when you take a look at how Miami wind up winning that series as they use more and more of their depth, and they relied on so many different types of players at so many different types of times to help. But now arguably the one thing that we could have said was the best part of the Celtics is kind of gone. That depth, that having the Brogdon on the bench, that having the Derek White to have the ability to start or be on the bench as well. Now these guys are going to squeeze some more minutes out of these guys, and we'll just see how that looks. For me, naturally, I don't. I think you throw Giannis 14 nobodies and you're already a playoff team. Like, so now you're throwing him arguably a top 15, top 20 talent in the league, top 75 ever, arguably, top 75 player in the league, you know. And you're talking about you still have a guy like Middleton now 1 year removed from his injury, so he should look a lot better than what he did last year. You still have Brooke Lopez on this team. You still have a lot of the pieces that were present for winning that championship, and that pedigree of winning a championship. You don't lose that once you
Yeah.
have it, you know? So for
What's
me,
the
as of right now,
Bucks?
they're better.
What's their Bucks bench situation? Because it also doesn't seem to
It's pretty
be.
thin too.
Yeah, like
It's
you
pretty
talk
thin,
about
and
depth
that's
here. It's not
why
super. It's not crazy.
and and that's why I say the whole Giannis thing about
Yeah.
he could play with 14
Yeah, yeah.
random
No,
guys,
I
it won't
agree.
matter.
I agree.
Because and I just don't feel that same way about Tatum
No,
or
I definitely
Jalen Brown, you
agree.
know?
I definitely agree on that. I think where the Celtics come with this is just more betting on Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum. Like you just bet on them to because they've actually have been showing their entire career that they have upgraded their game every single year. So you hope they do that again. You got a bunch of other guys that are really good. I'm interested to see what happens. I actually hold Jrue Holiday in a higher standard than Marcus Smart, even though I do think Marcus Smart's really good. Um, yeah, we have to see. But I actually want to touch on pretty quickly, and you can let me know if you have anything else. James Harden situation. I know because we're at an hour, so I want to touch on what are your thoughts on this James Harden situation? Do you think he gets traded? Do you want to recap the James Harden situation for the listeners if they're not aware?
All right. I'm a James Harden aficionado at this point, and
Exactly.
I've seen what the inside I've seen what the inside of a James Harden holdout looks like. So we start this off with saying, last you have to preface it with last postseason, right? Is we're talking about a Philly team that had after game 5 an impressive game from James Harden, a 3-2 lead in the series over the Boston Celtics and wind up fumbling it in game 6 and then wind up eventually losing it in game 7, right? Um, you go into that off season, hear all the rumblings from Daryl Morey that they're looking to put a consistent roster for this team so it continues to look good. And when we go into the off season, there's the rumblings of James Harden might go back to the Rockets. There's now what is being reported by Stephen A. Smith is that there was conversations even to the point where it was very close that James Harden was gonna get that max deal that he was looking for from the Rockets, but James Harden views himself as something that other other teams or other organizations don't view him as anymore. And that's a very dangerous place to be, right? Is you see yourself as something that other people don't, right? He still sees himself as a number one option, scoring option that could replicate what he did in Houston a few years back. The rumors is that Ime Adoka was was in these conversations and heard that and said that you know what, I'm good, we could go with Frank, we could with Fred, not
Yeah,
Frank,
Fred.
we could
Fred.
go with Fred rather than Harden and the at this time just for the chemistry of this team, right? So they went their own separate ways with that. um James Harden was holding on to hope that he was going to get that max that apparently under the table was agreed upon last year, which, let's be honest, it was a little weird last year. Um,
Yep.
not last year, but the year previous is off season when Harden, who was upset about the Nets offer and situation, um, went into it betting on himself and taking less money so that they can add players. And who are the players they had? PJ Tucker, who at that moment, I'm not gonna lie, I thought he was gonna be more
Me
impactful
too.
after seeing what he did in Miami the year previous, and then adding uh not Milton. His name's
D'Anthony Melton.
escaping me, but Anthony Melton. Adding guys like that, you thought these were going to be impactful, but we saw it wasn't that much of an impact for them. So that's the offseason. He's now expecting that max from the Sixers. The Sixers do not acquiesce. They say, we can't give you that. And honestly, if I'm Daryl Morey, I don't even know if you should be at fault for that because realistically, looking at the landscape, just doesn't make sense. So James Harden goes into the China, and I'm sorry, listeners, but this is a long, long story.
It's a lot of history.
But James Harden goes to China and decides to openly say and knowingly knows that it would be everywhere on social media that Daryl Morey is a liar and did not only just leave it at that, he decided to repeat the statement. And then he goes on through this offseason to go to the club like we know he does so well and go to a sign that says Daryl Morey is a liar. Um, as we can see now, we're at training camp time, and there has been reports. He obviously missed media day. There was reports that he might not go to practice, but he actually did go to practice. So the last report we got was from Woj that stated that if he attends camp, he was going to become a problem. Like he was
Yeah.
going to make issues. And as from what we're seeing now, or what word has been in practice, is all of the players are cool with James Harden. He hasn't been a problem. He's been practicing hard. There's even reports that Nick Nurse and him have spoken, and he's at all at the type of coach that Nick Nurse is. So there might be space for to reconcile, but like who knows? Who knows? That's where we are now in these reportings. Does James Harden get traded? You ask me.
Yes.
I think he does. I think he does. But I don't think it's going to happen now. I think this is going to be something that drags towards trade deadline. He's going to try to remain professional to a certain degree, just because he wants them to get him to the Clippers, right? And
Yeah.
there's no way it's going to happen if he does what he just did with Houston, or he did a little bit to the levels of when he was on the Nets. So, what do you think, though, Brian?
No, I think this is. I don't know if I saw a reporter say this or a fan, but I think I saw someone was, and I agree, saying that he's playing nice so that this trade is more likely to happen. And I do think he still wants off of Philly because how do you repair? I mean, yeah, I guess him and Daryl Morey have a very long relationship. They've been good friends for the longest time, so maybe it's a lot easier to repair the smear campaign James Harden has just gone on, and everything. Maybe not. I don't know, but to me, it seems like this is just like a I can't believe you. I need to get out of here. But in order to actually get out of here, I'm going to play nice. It really seems likely that I don't really know any other teams that are fiending hard to get James Harden other than the Clippers. But it's surprising to me, though, that what's his name? Terrence Mann is such like a I will never trade Terrence Mann because he's so important, and that's what's stopping us from getting James Harden. Like we've seen him do some good stuff, but like I don't know. I guess maybe I don't pay enough attention to the Clippers. Like, is he really that much of an asset? Like that crazy?
No, I think that there's just a level of like you start to homer a little bit,
Mm.
even as a GM. You believe in a guy so much because you put so much into him that you think that he should stay. I was thinking about this earlier this week too because of that. I play a lot of my GM, our association, my NBA, whatever it's called, on on 2K, and obviously I'm not equating it to I'm an NBA GM, but you see where it happens, right? Like you're projecting what this guy could be in the future. You know what you invested into someone. There's a lot of times where you don't know if it makes sense to let go of a player. When we look back at a lot of players that weren't moved are moved to a certain team because they believe in one young player on their roster, you realize this is where GMs lose their jobs, right?
Yeah.
And take a look back. We look at the Sixers. Sixers could have had James Harden before the Nets got him. They weren't willing to give up Bible. They weren't
Yeah.
willing to put. Where's Thibault? I think
He's in
he's on the
Portland.
Rockets. I
No,
don't know.
he's. I want to say
He's in Portland.
I want to
Oh,
say he's in Portland.
yeah, I think he's in Portland. Yeah, yeah. So like he's barely getting rotation minutes. Like this is the guy that they wanted to die on a hill on. Terrence Mann, the same thing. I was thinking about and looking at. I saw this online, and it reminded me, and it made me laugh too. Is thinking about back in '09, '10, when that roster that LeBron had with the Cavs was deplorable, but they won 66 games, right? They had the one bright side of that roster was JJ Hickson. And they believed like JJ Hickson was going to be that guy. Like he was going to be that guy. So there was an opportunity to get Amari Stoudemire. Obviously, we see what happened with the rest of Amari Stoudemire's career, but those first couple of seasons he went to the Knicks, he was very impactful.
Yeah.
Think about if you add that to LeBron. They did not trade him for JJ Hickson. JJ Hickson like resigned into like obscurity after that. Like there's a lot of players where this thing happens where the GM believes too much in a player and the hypotheticals like they're leaning on my side of the potential
Hmm.
energy of happening with these players, but it's just not met. And I think that's where we're at with this is I think you may it may if Terrence Mann is all you need to move a few other pieces to get Harden to the Clippers, I make the trade, man. You got to be able to separate the emotions of it
Yep.
and the feel of it because you know what Harden is right now. Even a complaining Harden is still a 20 and 10 player. Like, let that
Yeah.
sink in. Like, so I think that they would benefit from that, especially in a league where now they're prioritizing that these players have to play, you know?
Yeah. It's also like the fact that since the Clippers have Paul George and Kawhi, they've kind of just been all in all these years. They've tried to make a bunch of moves, and so like your only asset that you really have left that people would want is Terrence Mann, and so why not just full send the all in? Because all right, you get rid of Harden or not Harden, you get rid of Kawhi, if you get rid of Paul George, having Terrence Mann left over isn't ideal. Like that's not the all right. This guy's the future of our franchise. So like, if you really believe, and right now to me they're like half all in. Like I
Yeah.
and you that's like to me that's like one of the worst places you can be right now on this
Yeah.
roster. I don't know if there's anyone that can tell me that Terrence Mann is more impactful than having James Harden, and that's about it. So I don't know what else would have to go out in the trade, of course, but still, I think you make it regardless. Yeah, it just makes no sense.
This the strange part is they still would have Bones Highland. I think.
Yeah,
I don't know if he's been added into the package too, but if he was added into the package, still like if he's not added into the package, I meant to say if he's not added into the package, like I think losing Terrence Mann is not that much of an issue.
yeah.
Should not be that much of an issue.
The only way this actually makes sense to me is if Philly's actually more on the boat of, you know what, that whatever you can give us is just not enough for James Harden. Like we don't want that, not enough. That's the only way, because if you actually think about it with Philly, they
Mm.
if they get Terrence Mann, it's kind of the same situation we're just talking about, but opposite. Now Philly wants to win. They're not blowing it up yet, so I rather have James Harden on my roster than Terrence Mann. So like, and if I'm gonna do something, I want someone. If I'm gonna trade James Harden, I want someone of somewhat equal return rather than just a bunch of first picks or first round picks in Terrence Mann. But the only reason why I was harping on the other side is because there has been all those reports that Clippers refuse to include Terrence Mann in trades, which is fascinating.
You know, I kind of think that there might be a point, like, and this is how I envision if the season starts like this, um, or if Embiid starts to get upset with the situation where we're starting to think about like Embiid might be on the block or in the trade rumor mill,
Yep.
right? Um, there's a team that might be desperate for a point guard at this point that might get into the mix is the Bulls, right?
Mm,
Bulls offloads some picks, uh, but I don't think that that doesn't happen. I don't think that happens unless the Sixers know Embiid said trade me,
yeah.
right? But I think that that could happen if this season doesn't start the way that they want. Like, and I do think that there's a part of my mind that sees it as real as them having a slow start to the season, and then they're looking at the situation like, what the hell? Like,
Yeah.
what are we now? And I think the Bulls could be a really good, interesting place to go. Now, I know the mindset would be, I know the mindset would be is that they want to recuperate a player, right? A talent.
Yep.
They're going to think we should get a DeMar DeRozan or we should get a
Zach
Zach
Levine.
Levine. I don't think the Bulls want to do that. I think the Bulls still believe in this roster, which part of me is like, I don't know why you do, but I do think that like as Lonzo is sidelined and we just don't know what his career is going to look like when he comes back. Um, Harden is a good viable like look for them. Does
Yeah.
it make them a championship contender? I don't think so. But does it make them a fringe playoff team, a 4 or 5 seed? Possibly.
Yeah. No,
Have a
definitely,
surprise series? Yeah.
definitely possible. I don't know. To be seen. To be continued. I hope by the next time we talk, James Harden's traded, but it looking like might not happen. Um, well, yeah, I know, Jeff. This has actually been a lot of fun here. I'm actually glad we got to talk about this trade because we haven't really gotten each other's thoughts until now. So this has been a lot of fun. Do you have anything you actually want to say as before we wrap it up?
Yeah, as I guess with this last piece, because you did mention
Mm.
the Bucks' depth, so I'll just throw
Oh,
this
okay.
last piece in here. Is that they did add Malik Beasley, very quiet guy,
Yeah,
quiet postseason last year. It could be a decent guy
it's
in
a
this
flyer.
offense. I think they're going to start looking to Bosham to take a leap,
I like
and
him.
I think this is his 3rd year. Yeah, to
Hmm.
give him an opportunity. You still have Pat Connaughton. Jay Crowder came late in the season, so like we didn't really see that much of like Jay Crowder. They've got both of the Lopez brothers now.
Oh, true.
Um, and then honestly, this is
Yo, Thanasis, bro.
besides Bogdan. I ain't even gonna, I ain't even gonna talk about it. Obviously, Bobby Portis is still there, but this is an underrated pickup in my mind because, like, I do think like it. This was a team. This is a team that is inevitably, and just like the Thunder's is going to happen too, a team that has a wealth of picks, and consistently have a wealth of pick, start dropping players, and they wind up becoming something somewhere else. We think of like the Knicks of old and the 2000s, a lot of impactful guys that helped championships on other teams than the Knicks,
Hmm.
like because they were regarded to be the top players, but they just didn't actualize that, but they fit into a role. And I think of Jamal Crawford, I think of J.R. Smith, I think of Iman Shumpert.
Yep.
There's a list of, there's a bevy of guys that were like that, right? In this case, that's the Rockets, and that is Ty Washington leaving
Mm.
already. It's only been 2 years since he was a first round pick. He was waived by the Rockets, I believe,
Yeah.
and is now with this Bucks team. So we'll see what he winds up looking like with them. And I think he could be pretty nice. They also added that dude from Gonzaga, Drew Time.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Timmy, yeah. Yeah, okay. So I was gonna say you had me until I'm not crazy about Ty. If the Rockets, who have nothing going on for them, gave up on a first round pick already, then they must have seen something that we don't know. I mean, hey, maybe he is still
well,
that good. But so as you know, me potential guys, as any right now, I've been scarred too many times by potential guys. I don't believe it until I see it. So that's not crazy. But I will agree with you. I forgot about a lot of those guys that they have in their bench, especially like a Pat Connaughton or a Bobby Portis. Okay, they actually have some depth. That's actually really good. Okay, I might be flipping and say that the Bucks are actually still higher than the Celtics. That's pretty good.
I will say, for me, why I feel how I feel about Ty as like a guy that just needs a little bit of a chance. He's There's just something about like the Kentucky guards translating well
It's
into
true.
the league. Look at Malik Monk, that a guy that took some time. It took time, but he's still another one of those guys. But like you could literally go down a list
Oh yeah.
of Kentucky guards, and they always translate well into the league. I don't know what John Calipari does with them for them to be like seamless. It to be so
Hmm.
seamless for them at some point in the league. But that's why I give him a chance. I
Okay.
give him a chance.
You know what? Yeah, history has shown that these Kentucky guys are usually better than expected, and also the Rockets were just a disaster last year. So maybe this year he'd be a little bit better. I don't know. And especially like I don't know, he gets to learn from a lot of other guys. He gets to learn from someone like Dame. There's potential, but I still bet on those other guys. But no, that Milwaukee Bucks. All right, I agree. That's good. I completely forgot about their whole bench roster. I was just like, their starting lineup is nice, but I forgot about their whole bench. Well, Jeff, it has been fun catching up. It's been fun talking about basketball. Next week, more preseason games are actually going to happen, so be able to see some of these things that we're talking about that theoretically sound really nice, but in actuality, when these personalities clash, what happens? Man, it's been fun, and this has been episode 58